Be me. Name is Christine. 35. Operations manager at a regional distribution company. Been with this company for 8 years. Worked my way up from coordinator. Manage a team of 22 people, mix of warehouse staff and office workers. About 18 men and 4 women on my team specifically. Company has maybe 120 employees total across 3 locations. I've always been passionate about workplace equality and women's advancement. Spent the last few years reading books about feminist leadership. Following accounts about dismantling patriarchy in corporate spaces. Felt like I finally had the knowledge and position to make real change. 6 months ago, I got promoted to senior operations manager. Now I oversee 3 teams instead of 1, about 65 people total. Most of them are men because it's warehouse and logistics work. Physical labor, driving forklifts, managing inventory, that kind of thing. The 4 women on my original team are all in office roles. Data entry, scheduling, customer service, administrative support. I started noticing patterns immediately after my promotion. Men dominating team meetings, talking over the women. Women's ideas getting dismissed or credited to men later. The guys making decisions at the warehouse without consulting office staff. Classic patriarchal workplace dynamics that needed disrupting. I spent a month developing a comprehensive equity initiative. Called it the Balanced Voice Project. Presented it to my boss, Karen. She's the VP of Operations. Karen's in her 50s, been with the company forever. Very old school. She looked skeptical when I explained it, but said I could pilot it with my teams. I was so excited, finally a chance to implement real systemic change. Called an all-hands meeting for my 65 direct reports. Booked the main conference room. Created a professional presentation. Everyone filed in looking confused about why we were having a full team meeting. I stood at the front and explained we're implementing new communication standards to ensure all voices are heard equally regardless of gender. Put up my first slide, new meeting protocols for equity. Rule 1, in meetings with both men and women present. Men must raise their hands and wait to be called on before speaking. Rule 2, men are limited to 2 comments per 30-minute meeting. Rule 3, if a man disagrees with a woman's point, he must first affirm her perspective before offering alternatives. Rule 4, men must track their speaking time to ensure they don't exceed their proportional share based on gender ratio in the room. Rule 5, violations will be noted and addressed in performance reviews. I looked out at the room, expecting maybe some pushback, but also expecting the women to look relieved and validated. Instead, I saw confusion on everyone's faces, including the women. One of the guys, Marcus, raised his hand. I felt validated. See, they're already following the protocol. Yes, Marcus, I called on him. How is this going to work in the warehouse? When we need to coordinate truck loading or handle safety issues. The rules apply in all work contexts, I said firmly. We can't have exceptions or the whole system breaks down. Another guy, James, raised his hand. Yes, James. What about one-on-one conversations or small groups? All professional interactions, I confirmed. You'll get used to it quickly. The meeting ended, and I felt good about setting clear expectations. Sent a follow-up email with the full policy document attached. Included a section about how this benefits everyone by creating more inclusive communication dynamics. First few days were awkward, but I expected that. Change is always uncomfortable at first. The morning warehouse briefings started taking twice as long because men had to raise hands and wait to be called on. David, one of my logistics coordinators, raised his hand during a briefing. I called on him. He said there's a problem with the loading dock scheduling, then stopped talking. I waited for him to continue. He said that was his first comment, needed to save his second for later in case something else came up. I made a note to discuss strategic communication with him later. The women on my team started looking uncomfortable. Sarah from customer service pulled me aside after a meeting. Christine, this is making everything really weird. She said the guys are acting like robots. Following the rules exactly, but it doesn't feel natural. I told her that's just the adjustment period. Once everyone adapts, it will create better dynamics. She didn't look convinced but nodded and went back to her desk. Week 2, and I started noticing the men were being incredibly literal about the hand-raising and comment-limiting rules. We had a meeting about a client delivery issue. Needed to solve it quickly. Client was upset. I asked for input on how to fix it. Jennifer from scheduling suggested rerouting through our other facility. Good idea, I said. What do you all think? Silence. All the men just sitting there. Guys, I need input here. This is urgent. Marcus raised his hand. Yes, Marcus. I agree with Jennifer's suggestion. He put his hand down and stopped talking. Okay, but how would we execute that logistically? Marcus raised his hand again. That's my second comment. I'll defer to someone else. Then, he actually put his hands flat on the table, like he was physically preventing himself from speaking. This happened with every meeting that week. Men speaking in absolute minimum sentences, raising hands robotically, counting comments, going silent after 2. Meanwhile, problems were piling up. Deliveries delayed because coordination was taking too long. Safety briefing that normally took 15 minutes took 45. Client complaints increasing because response time slowed down. I called another meeting to address the malicious compliance. That's what it felt like, malicious compliance. Everyone sat down and I stood at the front. I explained that the spirit of the policy is inclusion, not literal robotic adherence to rules. Marcus raised his hand. Yes, Marcus. Christine, we're following the policy exactly as written. We don't want any violations noted in our performance reviews. He put his hand down, first comment used. I felt my frustration rising. You're making this harder than it needs to be. James raised his hand. We're just being careful to follow all guidelines. Don't want to be accused of dominating conversations. Another guy, Kevin, raised his hand. I've been tracking my speaking time like Rule 4 says. In a room with 20% women, men should speak 20% less. So, I've been timing myself to stay under my allotted seconds. I stared at him. You're literally timing yourself with a stopwatch. He held up his phone showing a timer app. Just following the rules, Christine. That's his second comment. He went silent. The meeting was a disaster. I tried to explain nuance and context, but every time the men spoke, they were counting comments, raising hands, speaking in minimal sentences. After 30 minutes, I dismissed everyone, went back to my office, and sat there feeling frustrated. They were deliberately sabotaging the policy, making it look ridiculous when it was meant to create equity. Week 3, and everything started falling apart. We missed a major delivery deadline because coordination failed. The warehouse team couldn't communicate quickly enough. With all the hand-raising and comment limiting, client called Karen, my boss, to complain directly. Karen called me into her office. Christine, I'm getting complaints about your team's performance. What's going on with these new communication rules? I explained the Balanced Voice Project, how it's meant to create equity and inclusion. Karen listened, then asked, how are your team members responding? I admitted the men were being difficult about it, following the rules too literally, not embracing the spirit. Karen leaned back in her chair. Christine, have you considered that maybe the rules are the problem? The rules aren't the problem, the resistance is. Karen shook her head. We're a logistics company. We need fast, clear communication. Your rules are making that impossible. I tried to argue, but she cut me off. Fix this, or I'm pulling the policy. You have 1 week to show improved performance. I left her office angry. Why couldn't people understand that discomfort means growth? That changing systems requires temporary disruption. Called a meeting with just the 4 women on my extended teams. Wanted to hear their perspective without the men present. Sat down with Sarah, Jennifer, Lisa, and Amanda. Asked them how they felt about the new policies. Sarah spoke first, looking uncomfortable. Christine, I appreciate what you're trying to do. But honestly, it's made everything harder. What do you mean? I asked. The guys are so focused on following rules. They won't just talk to us normally anymore. Everything feels formal and weird. Jennifer agreed. I asked Marcus a question about inventory yesterday. He raised his hand before answering, even though it was just us two. It felt ridiculous. Lisa from Data Entry said she actually missed the old dynamic. At least before people would just brainstorm and solve problems. Now it's like everyone's walking on eggshells. But weren't you feeling talked over before? I asked. They looked at each other. Amanda finally said, honestly, not really. I mean, sometimes the guys would get excited and talk fast. But they always listened when we had something to say. Marcus has been mentoring me on logistics software. He's actually really respectful. I felt something crack in my certainty. So you're saying you didn't want this policy? Sarah answered gently. Christine, we never said we felt silenced. You assumed we did. And now you've created the system that makes everyone miserable, including us. I sat there processing this. All my training, all my reading about patriarchal workplaces. I'd been so sure I was fixing a problem. But what if there wasn't a problem to fix? That night, I went home and looked at the performance metrics. Compared the last 3 weeks to the 3 weeks before. Delivery times up by 30%. Client satisfaction down by 25%. Team communication rated as poor by everyone in weekly surveys. Even the women rated it poorly. I pulled up my favorite feminist leadership accounts. Read through posts about dismantling workplace patriarchy. Everything sounded right in theory. But the reality in my warehouse was completely different. These weren't corporate tech bros dominating meetings. They were logistics workers trying to coordinate trucks. And I'd made their jobs impossible. Next morning I called an emergency all-hands meeting. Everyone filed in looking wary. I stood at the front and took a deep breath. I'm suspending the Balanced Voice project effective immediately. The room went completely silent. You can go back to normal communication. No more hand raising, comment limiting, time tracking. I paused, and I owe you all an apology. I implemented a system based on assumptions, without asking if there was actually a problem, without considering how it would affect actual work. And I made everyone's job harder in the process. Marcus, who'd been sitting with his arms crossed, spoke up, without raising his hand first. Christine, can I say something? Please, I said. We weren't trying to sabotage you. We just followed the rules exactly because we were scared. Scared that any deviation would be seen as resistance. Or get noted in our reviews like you said it would. James added, most of us have families, bills, mortgages. We can't risk our jobs by breaking rules. Even rules we think don't make sense. Kevin spoke up, I don't dominate meetings. I just know the warehouse systems really well. So people ask me questions, and I answer them. That's not patriarchy. That's just doing my job. I felt tears starting to form. You're right, I said, all of you. I came in with this framework from books and social media. Applied it to a workplace that didn't need it. Made you all follow rules based on gender. When what you needed was just to do your jobs. Sarah raised her hand, then laughed and lowered it. Old habit, she said. Christine, we know you meant well. But maybe next time ask us what we need. Instead of assuming you know. The meeting ended, and people filed out quietly. Not angry, just relieved. Over the next few days, performance started returning to normal. Deliveries on time. Communication flowing naturally. The warehouse guys joking around again, instead of being robotic. Women engaging naturally instead of feeling weird about special treatment. 2 weeks later, Karen called me into her office. I expected to be fired, honestly. But she just looked at me and sighed. Christine, you're a good manager. You care about your team, you work hard. But you let ideology override common sense. I know, I said quietly. She continued, not every workplace has the same dynamics. What works in a tech startup doesn't work in a warehouse. You need to manage the team you have, not the team you think you should have based on theory. I nodded, understanding finally clicking. She sent me to a leadership training course about adaptive management and reading team dynamics. It was actually helpful, focused on reality, not ideology. 3 months later, my teams were performing better than ever. Metrics all up, morale improved, communication natural. I still cared about equality and inclusion, but I approached it differently. Actually talked to people about what they needed. Addressed specific issues with specific people. Not blanket policies based on gender. One day Marcus stopped by my office. Said he appreciated how I'd handled the whole situation. Admitting I was wrong, changing course. That actually made me respect you more, he said. A lot of managers would have doubled down. I thanked him, said, I learned a lot from the experience. He smiled and said, we all did. 6 months later, I'm training a new manager who's joining our team. She's young, fresh out of business school, very enthusiastic. Tells me about all these frameworks she learned, about disrupting traditional workplace hierarchies. I listen, then tell her about the Balanced Voice project. The whole story, how it failed, why it failed. She looks thoughtful when I finish. So, you're saying we shouldn't address inequality at work? No, I say. I'm saying address real problems, not theoretical ones. Talk to your team, understand their actual dynamics. Don't impose solutions to problems that don't exist. She nods slowly. I can tell she's processing. One more thing, I add. The people doing the work know the work better than any book. If your policies make their jobs harder, you're not helping anyone. Year later, I'm in a conference room with other operations managers. Someone brings up implementing gender-based communication guidelines. Says they read about it in a leadership book. I speak up, share my experience. The room goes quiet as I describe what happened. How well-intentioned policies created disaster. How the people I meant to help didn't want the help. How performance tanked and morale died. Another manager says, but we need to do something about inequality. I agree, but do something that actually works. Address specific behaviors with specific people. Create genuine opportunities for advancement. Don't create elaborate rules that make work impossible. The conversation shifts after that. People talking about real solutions instead of theoretical frameworks. After the meeting, 3 other managers thank me. Say they almost implemented similar policies. Now they're going to approach it differently. That night, I'm at home thinking about the whole journey. How sure I was that I was right. How certain I was that the rules would fix everything. How wrong I was about almost everything. My team didn't need a savior. They needed a manager who listened, who solved actual problems instead of creating theoretical ones, who treated them like individuals, not representatives of their gender. I pull out my old notes from the Balanced Voice project. All that research, all those sources I cited, sounded so right on paper. Completely failed in reality. Delete the files, don't need them anymore. Open a new document instead. Title it Lessons from Failure. Write down everything I learned. Number 1, theory doesn't always match reality. Number 2, ask people what they need, don't assume. Number 3, policies that hurt performance hurt everyone. Number 4, good intentions don't justify bad outcomes. Number 5, your job is to make work easier, not harder. Number 6, treat people as individuals, not categories. Number 7, be willing to admit when you're wrong. Save the document, might share it with new managers someday. My phone buzzes, text from Sarah. Team happy hour tomorrow, you coming? I smile and respond yes. This is what success looks like. Not implementing perfect policies, but building genuine relationships with your team, earning respect through humility, and creating space for actual work to happen. Anyway, that's my story. About how I implemented office rules for men and watched everything collapse around me. Not because men were resistant, but because the rules were terrible. Based on ideology, not reality. Designed to solve problems that didn't exist. I learned that equality doesn't come from rules. It comes from respect. And respect comes from treating people like people, not like problems to solve, or representatives of their gender. Just individuals trying to do their jobs.